Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Alex. Okay, let's begin our class. Well, Alex, I think you are the only student I have. Maybe George is with us. Let's check our homework. The homework was a reading comprehension, page number 120, and it continues to page 121. Exercise 1, page 120, and exercise 4, page 121. The first exercise in the homework, page 120, they are two questions. What attracts young people to become doctors? What attracts young people to become doctors, to study medicine and not engineering or architecture? Who can answer this question, part of the homework?
Well, I think the salary is a good point, I think, for studying medicine.
Yes. Principally in America, Alex.
Yes.
In America, you can't imagine the salary they have. So this, the salary, the money, the income, yes, this is one of the attractions. Maybe you will be surprised, Alex, but some students love studying medicine because of the uniform, the white uniform, and the prestige, you know, working in a hospital. Everybody respect doctors, so they feel that being a doctor could give them certain status. I don't know. Would you like to be a doctor?
No, I don't.
I don't either. I don't either. No, working in a hospital with people, with ill people, sick people, no, it's not appealing to me. Second question is, how do you think studying medicine might be different from studying other subjects at university? I mean, what could be a difference between studying medicine and studying any other degree at the university? Do you see any difference?
Yes, maybe the laboratories, if you like to do practice, I think it could be a good option.
Yes, you are right. And you have to memorize many things, Alex. You have to memorize a lot of details about biochemistry. You have to study also physiology, anatomy, biology, biochemistry, a lot of things which are important, because if you forget one of these things, maybe you kill a patient. So imagine, yes, imagine the responsibility, Alex. No. I wouldn't like to be a doctor or something. Even when I would like to have the salary, you know, but you have to accept life as it is. Now, the second part of the homework was exercise number 4, which is on page 121. Let me show you the page. I know that it's not necessary, but page 121 here. Exercise 4, this one here. Choose from the sentences A to G the one which fits each gap 1 to 6. There is one extra sentence which you don't need to use. Let's check this. Well, in the space number 1, what letter do you think it is?
I don't know, Jerry. I couldn't do this exercise.
Okay, don't worry, Alex. Don't worry. We are alone, so don't worry. Yes, do it anytime you have a chance in order to practice, It's only for practicing because reading comprehension is a pain in the neck. So in any chance you have, try to do it. What are we going to do today? Well, we are supposed to finish a listening. I know we finished the listening on page 119. I think we finished that. Did we?
Yes. Yes.
Good. Good. So let's go to page 121 because there are a lot of idiomatic expressions that people use, and maybe you don't remember logically because it was last class, but during the listening last class, the people, the speakers, there were 5 speakers, they were using these idiomatic expressions. Sometimes these idiomatic expressions, I refer to vocabulary right on the right column. You have some idiomatic expressions which are highlighted, like a number 1, rub shoulders with, number 2, rush off their feet, etc. And the idea is that you take your dictionary, because you are going to learn a lot of expressions that are very, very common in common speaking situations. And when you know the meaning, try to match this idiomatic expression with their meanings, with the letters A, B, C, D, etc. So I'm going to give you some minutes. And when you finish, Alex, send me a message.
Okay.
Good. Very good. The first one is rub shoulders with. What letter do you think it is? Letter C. Yes, letter C. Meet and spend time with. Alex, do you have any expression in Spanish that is more or less similar to this? Rub shoulders with.
Yo lo he entendido algo así como codearse con.
Yes, codearse, yes. Very good. Trabajar codo con codo. Yes, very good. Rub shoulders with is the English version. And number 2, rush off their feet. What letter? A. Very good. Be very busy. Yes. Number 3, being thrown in at the deep end. What is it, number 3? D. Number 3 is letter D, which is start something new or difficult without help or preparation. A student told me in the morning, Alex, that in Spanish they say lanzarse al vacío or something like that. Next, feeling a bit of color. What letter? B, correct. Feel slightly ill. Not very much, slightly. A bit of color. And 5, get to the bottom of it. E, Alex, correct. Discover the truth about a situation. I think we say the same in Spanish, more or less the same. 6, feeling very under the weather. F, correct. Feel ill. And finally, taken aback. Letter G, yes. Surprise or shock someone so much that they don't know how to behave for some time. In Spanish, Alex, what is that? I was taken aback.
Sería algo así como quedarse sorprendido, ¿no? O algo así.
That's Spanish in general, but Spanish from Spain.
No sé.
A student told me, me quedé flipando, something like that. taking aback es que flipé, I don't know. Flipé, me quedé flipando, I don't know. Something like that. My God, in Spain, you have a special Spanish. Well, Alex, the idea is that these are expressions people use a lot, and you have a chance of studying this expression and use them whenever possible, because the reality is that we normally forget the expressions that we are not using constantly. That is the reality. We are humans, you know. Well, now what? Now I want you to see a video that is going to illustrate the vocabulary that we need when we speak about health, medicine, medical situations, etc., etc. Let's watch this video. Good. What is the importance of this video? The vocabulary. Because sometimes we teachers forget that we have to teach how to speak, how to write, and we need the vocabulary. If we are strict only to the vocabulary in the book, you won't be able to speak about any other topic. So the vocabulary is essential. It's a pity that you and me are alone. I know, not alone. In the meanwhile, I have Natalie and I have Laura Sanchez. Thank you for coming, friends. Well, this is the vocabulary you need to speak about healthy problems and doctors' diagnostics and check-up and things like that. If you use the idiomatic expressions you have on page 121, the phrasal verbs that you have on page 119, and now the vocabulary you study with this video, I think you have enough elements to be able to sustain a conversation about health problems. Now what? In the grammatical aspect of this unit, we have to study again the relative pronouns. I don't know if you remember the relative pronouns. The relative pronouns are who, which, and what is the difference? Who for people, which for things. Sometimes we can replace who and which for that. It is possible. You can say who or that. This is the student who I told you about, or this is the student that I told you about. See that? This is the car which I bought, or this is the car that I bought. So the relative pronouns, I insist, are who, which, or that. And when I want to express possession, whose, W-H-O-S-E, whose. When I want to speak about place, where. When I want to speak about time, when. And sometimes, if I want to use who, but previous to the who, you have a preposition, we change who for whom. We never say to who, but to whom. We never say of who, but of whom. So I repeat, when I have a preposition and I need to use who, I change who for whom. And these are the relative pronouns. And what is the relative clause? Well, a relative clause is a group of words, sometimes many words, sometimes a few number of words, But the characteristic is that the initial element, the initial word, is always a relative pronoun, who, which, that, when. That's why this clause, and remember that a clause is a short sentence. This clause has the name of relative because the initial element is a relative pronoun, who, which, that, when, where. Relative clauses in reality are working as adjectives. They have an adjectival function. They are telling you something extra about the person or the house or the car that I am talking about. I think that the best way of remember, because you study this in secondary school and also maybe in high school, so the best way of remembering this is showing you something, a chart. Let me look for it. Give me a second. I prepared a chart that I found on the internet in order to make it very clear. Here you are. Relative clauses. It is used to give extra information. You see, extra. It's like an adjective. Extra information about the nouns in the main clause without starting another sentence. So they are considered to be only one sentence. In reality, they are divided in two parts. They say that they are divided into two clauses, the relative clause and the main principal, and the main clause. I'm preparing things to send you this chart to your WhatsApp group. Let me see if I can find it. Yes, here. Give me a second. I want you to have it in your mobile, so if you want to study it, because some people study, you know, if you want to study, you can do it. Have you received it, Alex? Good. Well, that's it. Let's analyze the chart. Well, let's see. A relative clause starts with a relative pronoun. Who, that, which, that, where, when, whose. Let's see the first part. Who or that. Subject or object pronoun for people. You have an example. That's the woman. Woman is a person. That's the woman. I have to use who. That's the woman who bought my house. And this is important, so pay attention. In reality, this sentence is divided into two parts. That's the woman, the main clause, main principal, the main clause, and who bought my house, the relative clause. So we have two clauses. Remember that clauses are short sentences. We have two short sentences. That's the woman is the principal, who bought my house is the extra information I am giving you, and it is considered relative because the initial word is who, relative pronoun. So when I speak about people, I use who. Now let's see which or that. Subject or object pronouns for animals or things, not for people. Animals or things. The horse which Mary was riding is very friendly and beautiful. I am speaking about an animal, so I don't use who, I use which. Logically, you know, I can replace which for that. I can say the horse that Mary was riding is very friendly and beautiful. Similar in the first example, I can say that's the woman that bought my house. Well, what is the difference between example 1 and 2 apart from who and which? The difference is that in the second example, the horse, the relative clause is in medial position. And friends, this creates confusion among my students, because some students think that the relative clause has to be at the end, like in number 1. That's the woman who bought my house. You see, no. Here in the second example, the main clause, the principal part is the horse is very friendly and beautiful. This is the principal part of the sentence. And in the middle, you have the relative clause, which Mary was writing. This is the relative clause in central medial position. Sometimes in the exams, they give you 2 sentences and you have to insert one of the sentences using relative clauses into the first sentence, and you have to look for the antecedent. You have to look for the antecedent, and you have to write the relative clause immediately after the antecedent. In the first example, the antecedent is woman, because who bought my house? The woman. So I have to write the relative clause immediately after woman. But in the second example, the horse is very friendly and beautiful. You see, the horse is in initial position, it's not at the end, and I have to insert the relative clause and immediately after the antecedent, which is the horse. That's why which Mary was writing is breaking the sentence in the central position, because horse is at the beginning and I have to add the relative clause immediately after the antecedent horse. Important, when you have to when you have to match 2 sentences using relative clauses, you have to immediately recognize what is the relative clause modifying to. You have to find the antecedent and you have to write your relative clause immediately after that word. If it is a thing or animal, which. If it is a person, who. Let's analyze where, place. Where refers to place, but you know that. Observe the example. We found the wood where I used to go. The antecedent is wood, so I write my relative clause at the end, because wood is at the end of the principal sentence. We found the wood where I used to go. When refers a time expression. Observe the example. I will never forget the day when I graduated. No which, because day is time, so it's when I graduated. The antecedent is day. Day is at the end, so I attach the relative clause at the end. Not always it is at the end, you know. Look at example number 2. Well, whose, in Spanish, cuyo, cuya, or plural, cuyos, cuyas, possession. For animal or people or things, no difference. Observe the example. The mother whose child is missing is very sad. This is a good example because, again, the antecedent is the mother and mother is at the beginning, so I have to break into 2 parts. The principal sentence, the mother is very sad, and I have to insert my relative clause in medial central position. The mother whose child is missing is very sad. Principal sentence, the mother is very sad. Relative clause, whose child is missing. Do you understand, friends? Say yes or no, and if you understand, Alex, and the other kids in class, that's important for me because if you need repetition, I repeat it with pleasure. Do you understand this part? Thank you, Laura. Thank you very much, my friend. Good, good. Because now, thank you, Natalie. Now things are going to get a little bit complicated, like everything in life. Things begins smoothly, easy, quietly, and with the passing of time, everything complicates. Think of your girlfriend, think of your boyfriend, Complicated, complicated. Alex knows about this. Well, now the problem is that relative clauses are divided into two different types, the defining and the non-defining relative clause. And what is this? Well, give me a chance and I will show you another shot dealing with this topic. Where is it? Ah, yes, here. Look at this. Defining versus non-defining relative clauses. It means that relative clauses are in reality two different types. The defining in red color and the non-defining in blue color. Let's see the characteristic of defining, the red. No commas. So we don't use commas when the relative clause is defining. And what is defining? Defining is necessary information. Necessary information. You cannot eliminate this part because it is necessary. Defining. It is defining. I can read necessary information essential to distinguish which thing or which person we are talking about. And they give you a good example. I called my brother who lives in Ontario. See that? There are no commas, you see? Why? Because if I don't say who lives in Ontario, you don't know who or which brother I'm speaking about. Because I have 5 or 6 brothers. So if I don't specify, you can get confused. Because I have a brother living in Getafe, another brother living in Cádiz, another brother living in Hawaii. See that? So I have to specify which brother I'm talking about. If I don't say who lives in Ontario, the person who is talking to me is going to get confused because this person is going to think, well, yes, Jerry, but which of your brothers? Which of them? Because you have many. In this case, when the information in the relative clause is essential, we don't use commas, okay? We don't use commas. I want you to compare now this defining characteristic with the blue color non-defining between commas. It means that when you use non-defining is not necessary. This information is not necessary. It's extra. In that case, we use commas. Observe the example, very similar to the initial one. My brother, comma, who lives in Ontario, comma, is older. Why I use comma? Because I have only one brother. So there is no possible confusion. You know that I have only one. So if my brother lives in Ontario or in Fuenlabrada, it's not essential. It's extra information. Very good, but it's not essential because if I eliminate who lives in Ontario, everything is right. My brother is older. Do you understand the difference between defining and non-defining, friends? Tell me yes or no, and that is enough. Thank you, Alex. And you, girls, do you understand more or less? Nothing. Silence. Well, that is the principal difference between defining relative clauses and non-defining relative clauses. If I see commas, I know that this... thank you, Natalie. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, friends, because now I feel better. If you don't understand something, tell me, right? No problem with that. I'm a teacher. I teach. Well, friends, that is the principal difference. I am in an exam, and I see the commas. I immediately think that I can eliminate this part. It's not essential. It's non-defining. If I don't see commas, it's because this information is extraordinarily important, right? I need this information because if not, I can get confused. Let's see the second aspect in the red color, defining. we can use that. Remember, I can replace, substituir, replace. I can replace who for that. I can replace which for that. Observe, we can use that instead of en vez de, instead of who or which. Example, that's the mug which or that you select I bought in Paris. No comma. So this is defining. Because I have many mugs at home. I have several mugs in the kitchen. So if I don't specify the one I bought in Paris, you don't know which mug I'm talking about. So this is essential because I have many mugs. I use which because mug is not a person. Or I can use that because that is good for person and things. The second example, I didn't know the man who or that was there. This part is essential, is defining, because if I stop in the man, you don't know which man I'm talking about. Yes? Very good. So we can replace who for that, which for that, when I am using a defining, no commas, a defining relative clause. The opposite happens in the non-defining blue color. We cannot use that. And this is a problem in your exams. You need to remember this. When you see commas, you have to use who for people. You have to use which for things or animals. You never use that when you are using a non-defining relative clause. I mean commas. I can read that we cannot use that instead of who or which. These bikes, comma, which cost a fortune, because bikes are not people. You use which, but never that, are made in Japan. Observe that which cost a fortune is extra information, but it's not necessary. I can say these bikes, because you are watching the bikes. When I use these, it's because you are in front of me. These bikes are made in Japan, and that is enough. But I wanted to give you more information about the bikes, and I tell you which cost a fortune. As this part is not essential, is not necessary, we use commas. And in that case, when we use commas, when we are using a non-defining relative clause, we cannot replace which for that. We cannot replace who for that. Never. Is it clear, friends? Silence. Thank you, Alex, my monitor. You are cheering me up. Laura, thank you, friend. Thank you very much. And Natalie? Well. Let's see the final aspect of this. Thank you, Natalie. I was waiting for your answer, friend. Well, the last part is in the red color, defining relative clause. Relative pronouns can be omitted. Relative pronouns can be omitted in the defining relative clauses. No commas. All the relative pronouns. No. We can omit who, which, or that. Always, no, not always, we need conditions. Let's analyze this. We can omit who, which, or that, because remember that in the defining, we can use that. I repeat, we can omit who, which, or that when they, who, which, or that are followed by subject and then a verb. So if after who, which, or that you have a subject, what is a subject? I, you, we, Peter, Mary, the girls, the students, the teacher. This is. When we have this condition, it is possible to omit the relative pronoun. Example, do you like the sun between parentheses? It means you can use it or not. Which or that I is the subject. Wrote is the verb. I have all the condition. American people and British people normally omit this relative pronoun in this case. But I need conditions, right? I need conditions. Number one, I need that the relative clause be defining, I mean no commas, and I need a subject after who, which, or that. In this example, I. Observe the second example. That's the man who or that I like. Again, I have the subject I and the verb like. I can eliminate who, I can eliminate that. So it is possible to say that's the man who I like, or that's the man that I like, or that's the man I like. This is not possible in the blue color non-defining relative clauses. No. In these examples with commas and all that, you can never omit the relative pronoun. Observe, it says we cannot omit who or which. Example, they introduced me to John, who I liked immediately. You have all the conditions. You have who and then I. Yes, but it is not possible because observe the comma. This is non-defining. And in the non-defining relative clauses, we have to use who or that, never that, and we never omit it. This problem of the omission of the relative pronoun only works with who, which, and that in defining relative clauses. It doesn't work with the rest of the relative pronouns. It doesn't work, the omission doesn't work with where, we never omit where. It doesn't work with when, we never omit when. It doesn't work with whose, never omit whose. Okay? We never omit whom, never. So only with who, which, that, in defining relative clauses, no commas. Wow, my friends, do you understand this? Dear monitor, do you understand, friend? Great, Alex. And you, Natalie? Good. And what about Laura? Nobody else? Laura, yes, very good. Thank you very much. Good, and now what? Well, now we have to do some exercises. We are going to begin with page 122, relative pronouns. Let me show you this page. Page 122. I think is next one. Yes, here. Exercise number one. Let's begin with exercise number one, which is very easy, but it's just for hitting the engine. Relative pronouns and relative clauses. Complete these sentences from reading and use of English, part 6, by writing one word in the gap, one word. In some cases, more than one answer may be possible. Let's do exercise one, and when you finish, please send me a message. Alex finished. Natalie finished. And Laura finished. Very good. Well, let's check it out. It says, I had in the individual weekly classes with my tutor, and in the blank, what did you copy in the space in blank? Who, Alex? And what about Laura? Natalie, the same? Okay, very good. Who is correct? Who also gave me work to do. 2. We used to spend the hour discussing such things as the properties of different medicines or the topic of an essay. Title was here. Who's Alex? Who's Laura Sanchez and Natalie? What about you, Natalie? Whose, very good. So whose title was Doctors Can Learn, blah, blah, blah. In number 3, I had the opportunity to pursue areas of interest, blank, in my case included neuroscience. In number 3, what did you use? Which for Alex, which for Laura, and which for Natalie. Perfect, perfect. Number 4, I had the opportunity to work in laboratories, rub shoulders with Nobel Prize winners. Where for Alex? Natalie, where? And Laura, where? The same. Very good, very good. And now, stop a minute. Who can translate this into Spanish? Huh? Because here we have an idiomatic expression. What is the translation in Spanish of number 4? Nobody? Yes, Alex, can you tell me, please?
Sería algo así como tuve la oportunidad de trabajar en laboratorios con, en plan mano a mano con ganadores de premio Nobel.
Ajá, very good, very good. Si quiero usar donde porque pues me obligan o porque quiero hacer hincapié en el relative pronoun where, lo puedo usar, decir algo así como tuve la oportunidad de trabajar en laboratorios donde me codié con ganadores del premio Nobel. Me codié. I rubbed shoulders with. 5. Students may even be able to inform the doctors and nurses of some very important detail blank has been overlooked. Here, what did you use? That for Laura. That for Alex. Well, it can be that or which. Both acceptable here in number 5. Let's go to exercise number 2. Easy exercise. Read these sentences which contain defining relative clauses, which contain non-defining relative clauses. Write D for defining or ND for non-defining after each sentence. This is a piece of cake, very easy exercise. So when you finish, send me a message. Good, Alex. Very, very good. So, number one, the village where I go for my holidays has a very healthy climate. D or ND? For Alex, is D defining. For Laura, D defining. And for Natalie, for Natalie, D. Thank you. Yes, defining. Defining. Very good. Mrs. Altmaier, who you met on the train, is a nurse. D or ND? ND, no defining for Alex, no defining for Laura, no defining for Natalie. Yes, see the commas. It has commas, non-defining. Now, number three, the children who you've been talking to all go to the same school. D or ND? D for Laura, defining. D for Alex, defining. And for Natalie? And for Natalie? Defining. Thank you, friend. Very good. Now let's go to 4. Have you still got the book which I lent you? D or ND? D for Laura, D for Alex. Well, it is D, it is defining. Number 5, my physical education teacher who was an Olympic champion says that exercise is essential for good health. D or ND? ND for Laura, ND for Alex. Very good. Non-defining. 6. Students who eat a good breakfast often do better at school. Defining or non-defining? Number 6. Defining for Alex. Defining for Laura Sanchez. Good. Very good. It is defining. Yes. And now, the most difficult part of this exercise. Listen. In which of sentences 1 to 6 could you use that instead of which or who? I repeat, in which sentences 1 to 6 above could you use that instead of which or who? Analyze this. Nobody. The question is, in which sentences could you omit who or which? Nobody knows? What are the sentences in which you can omit who or which? Two and five. No, Alex. Let me tell you again. We can omit who or which or that when we are writing a defining relative clause. Defining. This is condition number one. We are using a defining, no commas, no commas. We are using a defining essential relative clause. This is condition one. And second, after who, after which, or after that, we have a subject and a verb. We need these conditions. For example, number three, the children who you, I have you, have been talking, this is the verb. So in this example, you can eliminate who because it is defining. After who, you have a subject you, and after the subject you have the verb. Okay, so you can say the children you've been talking to, etc. And you eliminate who, possible. And if you observe number four, have you still got the book which I lent you? This is defining, very important, because if it is non-defining, you cannot omit it. But this is defining, no commas. And after which, you have the subject I, and then you have the verb lent. All the conditions. So I can say, have you still got the book I lent you? Well, what about exercise number 5? Observe exercise 5, everybody. Candidates often make mistakes with relative pronoun. Each of these sentences contain one wrong word or one extra word. So it can be a mistaken word or an extra word. Find and correct the mistakes. Let's see, or let's do number 1 together. Judy goes to the swimming club. It's near the central station. Here the problem is it's. You don't need it is. You can say which is. And you are using a relative clause. Judy goes to the swimming club, which is near the central station. You eliminate it and you copy which is. And now everything is perfect. Continue with this. And when you finish, send me a message. Exercise 5, page 122, relative clauses. Alex, finished? Laura, finished? Well, he says, number 2, Frank has a brother, his wife, possession, his is possessive adjective. So possession, you know the relative pronoun. I repeat, Frank has a brother, his sister is in hospital with a broken leg. So the perfect relative pronoun here is the possession relative pronoun whose. Frank has a brother whose wife, cuya esposa, whose wife is in hospital with a broken leg. Number 3, she is a student of yoga that is done with thousands of people in this country. What is the problem in number 3? Excellent. That is incorrect. We have to use which, because this is non-defining relative clauses. Observe the commas, and remember that in non-defining relative clause, we can never use that. For people who, for things which, yoga is a sport or something similar, which. Very good. Number 4, can I read that essay which you wrote it last week? The problem here is that you don't need the it. Can I read that essay which you wrote last week? We don't need to repeat it. It's not necessary. Eliminate the it, which you wrote. 5, Gabby's friends, whom you met them this morning, are going to the beach this afternoon. If you want to come, what is the problem here? Without them, Alex, exactly, you eliminate them. Gabby's friends who you met this morning, blah, blah, blah. Excellent. 6, I'm afraid I can understand that you are saying. What is the problem here? The problem here is that. That is not acceptable because this is not a relative pronoun. Sorry, this is not a relative clause. This is the sentence. I'm afraid I can understand what you are saying. Lo que estás diciendo. Lo que is not a relative clause. Right? So you change that for what? 7, Aziz lives in a large house which it has a view of the sea. What is the problem here? Without it, Alex. Yes, my friend. Aziz lives in a large house which has a view of the sea. You can imagine, Alex, how many problems in exams with these problems. 8, Mandy supports the football team which it won the league last year. And here in number 8, without it too. Yes, again, the problem is it is not necessary. Mandy supports the football team which won the league last year. Excellent. Now, Observe exercise 6, page 122. Join these sentences using a relative pronoun, and they give you one example. Did you see the film? They broadcast it on television last night. They are two separate sentences, and they want you to join the two sentences and create only one using relative clauses. And the result is, did you see the film that or which they broadcast on television last night? It is between parentheses, that or which. It means that you can use them or not. You can omit that, you can omit which. Did you see the film they broadcast on television last night? But what about number 2? Observe number 2, sentence number 2. He studied hard for his math exam. Second sentence, he found it quite easy. How can you match these two sentences using relative clauses? How can you do it? Let's see if you can do it. Have you finished? Only number 2. He studied hard for his math exam. He found it quite easy. What is a solution? There can be many. Can you tell me one solution for this? While or while he found or which? I think it's which, yes or no? Yes, okay, good. So the solution is which, yes. He studied hard for his math exam, which he found quite easy. And you have to use comma, because this information is extra information. It's not defining, it's not essential. He studied hard for his math exam is the important part. We are going to continue with this exercise, but not as homework. We are going to do this exercise in class next week. The homework for next week is the exercise I send you by WhatsApp. In your WhatsApp group, you have an exercise that you have to do for next class. Have you received it, Alex? Excellent, Laura. Excellent, Alex. Thank you very much. This is the end of the class. See you next week. Have a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful weekend. Thank you, Laura. Bye-bye, friends. Bye, Alex, my monitor.